Hi, everyone. My name is Lucky Nkosi. I go by Lucky Nkosi. I have two names, actually, Nhlanhla and Lucky, and they both mean the same thing. It means lucky. Clearly, naming things is quite easy for my family. Interesting fact, my mother's names are Nomathemba and Faith, which also mean the two exact same things. I am from a beautiful city called Johannesburg, also known as Joburg or Jozi, or more importantly, the city in South Africa that's not Cape Town. If you ever need to figure out where that is, it's quite easy. Just look at the name. It's in the south of this big, beautiful continent called Africa. Clearly, when they said cash invalidation and naming things were the two hardest things, they weren't talking about South Africans. We clearly don't struggle with this. South Africa is known for a lot of really, really awesome things. Our absolutely incredible nature, our breathtaking beaches, and of course, Table Mountain. Can you tell that I have beef with Cape Town? But we're also known for having the best rugby team in the world, and of course, hosting the absolute best World Cup there ever was. I see a few people nodding. I'd like to start this talk with a small disclaimer. I tend to overshare a little bit when I'm on stage, and today is not going to be any different. Now, I've attended some really awesome talks over the last 2 days, and I learned a lot, and I'm sure you have too. This is not one of those talks. In this talk, I'm mostly going to be talking about myself and some of the bad decisions I've made over the last couple of years in playing around with this beautiful drone that's in front of me. See, I like to think I'm the answer to the question, what would a spork look like if it were human? The thing about me is I struggle to really focus on the finer details of things when things are far, which makes it really, really difficult when you're traveling, because then it means you haven't checked that you've got your hotel accommodation and all of these different things. Psychologists call this time blindness, and it's apparently a symptom of ADHD. And none of this matters when you're rushing through airport and you're told you need a transit visa, otherwise you're not getting to the country that you're trying to get to. My friends and family have also started using this against me by saying, hey, we should do this cool activity well in advance so that I agree. And as the details come, they know that I'm not going to ask questions. And this has led me down some really, really dangerous paths. I've ended up pretty much diving, even though I can't swim. I've ended up climbing to what was the highest waterfall in the world. It's now number 2. I've rock climbed. And a few weeks ago, I jumped off the highest commercial bungee bridge in the world. And I'm scared of heights. And this extends well beyond just my spare time. As a job, I work as a software engineer for a company called BBD. We are a bespoke software development firm building solutions for large enterprises pretty much all over the world. Born in South Africa, and now the company is spreading its wings across Europe and India as well. My job is a little bit different. I lead a small unit called ATC, and we're effectively the company's Swiss Army knife. What it stands for doesn't really matter. What matters is that what we do. And what we do on paper is research, development. We're meant to do some specialized consulting, whatever that means. We do some DevRel work, and we look after some internal tools. All of this translates to me setting projects for the team while I get to play with my drones, and they achieve all of these awesome things. Don't worry, even though they're a small team, they're doing okay, and everything is absolutely fine. I also absolutely love community, and I'm involved with a few meetups, my favorite being Josie.js, which is another disclaimer. This entire talk is about JavaScript and how awesome it is. You should all stop writing all of your other languages. Write everything in JavaScript. You'll keep yourself employed forever, because it will stop working at some point. In addition to my job, I also teach computer science at Wits University. And because I seem to really dislike myself, I'm also a PhD student at the University of Pretoria. If you haven't realized this now, I overshare a lot. And the last thing I'll tell you about myself is a few years ago, I was diagnosed with something called narcolepsy. Now, for those of you that don't know it, it is a condition that's characterized by sudden sleepiness. So I might just fall asleep right now while speaking. And this was around the same time I was diagnosed with ADHD. What this means is that when I'm in a room like this one, sitting in your seat, it's quite easy for me to get distracted by something. A thought, a slide, a word, a phrase, pretty much anything. And so when I attended a talk by a colleague, she put up the slide. It read, "I flew my drone with Node," but also me, I crashed my drone into the wall with Node. Now, Jerry said a lot of very important things in this talk, but I know them, I just don't want to share them with you today. This is the one that stood out, because when I saw that, I started thinking, wait a minute, how on earth did Jerry manage to fly a drone with Node? And more importantly, if you could crash a drone with Node, I wonder how else I could crash a perfectly good drone. Fast forward a couple of months later, I'm on my way home from a work function after a couple of beers, and I did what some of us end up doing lately. I ended up on a cheap Chinese shopping website. This is before Temu. It was called wish.com. Could find anything on there, and I found this beautiful drone. It's called the SG900X something, something, something. There are quite a few characters there. And this drone is really, really awesome. It arrived about 6 months later, so I had already completely forgotten that I even ordered it. So it was a nice gift from past Lucky. It came with a controller, spare battery, and a whole lot of these cool things. There's only one problem. I live in Johannesburg, which means that I am right next to a police station, a school, military base, all the different types of places where I'm not allowed to fly a drone. So I got bored of it really quickly. And then I remembered this moment where Jerry flew her drone with Node.js. And so today, I bring you 5 ways to kill a perfectly good drone. To begin, I realized that this drone, I need to figure out how to control it with JavaScript, which means that I need to mimic the application that came with it. I needed to hack this drone so that I can control it. And we all know that the first step of hacking anything is to try and mimic what the app is doing, or to try and figure out how their solution is working. I don't come from a networking background, but I have colleagues who do, so I walked into our IT department and I said, I want to hack a drone. Show me how. They sent me on my way and said, look at Wireshark. I did a deep dive into Wireshark. Results may vary, but I struggled a little bit with this, got somewhere, and then the issue with the drone is that it would open up this Wi-Fi port, and every time I connect to it, my phone would then basically kill all other comms on the phone. This was a cheap Android phone, and things were not working. But the second thing that I had to do was try and mimic what their app was doing with my solution. This is what the Wireshark logs look like. If you click on any one of those at the bottom, it will actually show you the packets that are in there, and this didn't work for me. Someone advised that I download this app called Packet Capture in order to track what my phone was sending to the app, because then I could send the exact same data to the drone. This didn't work as well, and I was told it's on the Play Store, so it must be legit. It wasn't. At this point, I'd learned a couple of things. The first was that this protocol that was being used here was sending UDP packets across Wi-Fi onto the drone. And the second thing that I learned is that I know nothing about networking. And at this point, my friends intervened and said, you probably have better luck by using Apple products. I didn't have any at the time, so I convinced my one friend to actually let me use his and let me log all the activity that was happening on his phone for a week. He's a very brave man, a very, very brave man. But because, and only because, I care about your safety, and not because I couldn't get it working, I decided to come up with a different solution. I took the company credit card and bought a better drone. The better drone is called the Parrot Mambo Mini. It's a tiny drone. It fits in the palm of my hand, and I've got it over here. And I'm going to keep it plugged in because it being tiny means that the battery is even tinier. This drone is really, really cool. It comes with some attachments, including a cannon shooter, so I could program it to shoot things, and it's got claws, so you could fly it, to catch you or to grab you a cold beverage when you're feeling hot. The cool thing about this drone is that it had two ways with which I can interact with it. I could either use Wi-Fi or Bluetooth Low Energy. Now, Wi-Fi, because I had already had such incredible learning opportunities with it, with the first drone, I decided to ignore it and focus on Bluetooth Low Energy. Now, BLE is slightly different from old school traditional Bluetooth, and really there's three things that distinguish it. The first is that it doesn't use a lot of power, which means that we can run Bluetooth devices over much longer periods of time, which means that the applications for this technology start changing. Our smartwatches, we can put it at bus stop. So the applications are where you don't need to stream large amounts of data, but only send tiny messages across. It also means that you can now have simultaneous connections to your devices. I think it's up to 20, depending on the hardware. Excuse me. While I was thinking about this and trying to play around it, one of my colleagues, his name is Mike Geyser, gave this talk titled, "What Should the Web Do?" And I realized that web developers are quite obsessed with overthinking and overcomplicating how we should build a simple screen. And while we're all debating which framework is better, the users have decided they want absolutely everything to be in the browser. And I'm the users, because I hate having to download an application that I only use once and it takes up space on my phone. So to get back to our countdown, let's start at number 5. At number 5, JavaScript. As soon as I told my colleagues I'm going to fly this drone with JavaScript, I was told, yeah, that's definitely a way to kill it. One of my favorite things about the JavaScript community is that we love absolutely sharing and building everything, even AI stuff. Doesn't matter how new or niche it is, we will build a JavaScript library for it. And so I just Googled drone.js, and I found this script from Peter O'Shaughnessy. And in true open source nature, I borrowed his script and I added some modification, and I ended up with these two scripts. One to manage how I connect to this drone by hard coding pretty much most of the things. And then the second one, which spoke to how I send commands and different instructions to this drone, which meant that I could write beautiful code that looks like this, just to tell the drone to do different things. I won't show you this demo, you're just going to have to trust me. At number 4, mimicking other devices. At the time, I was also quite interested in mobile devices. One of the really, really interesting things about building solutions in Africa is that you have to contend with things like poor connectivity and the fact that the bulk of your audience is actually on budget cell phones. And so I've spent quite a lot of time working on how to build resilient payment apps and how to make sure that what we build is able to run on those feature phones. And so in order to explore that, I looked at MDN Web Docs, and I found this really interesting section around this interactivity or APIs around the sensors. They're called the Sensors API, and one of them piqued my interest. It was the accelerometer sensor, supported by most major browsers nowadays, but you can check if the browser that your application is running in supports it. You can initialize a new sensor in order to read this data, and then you start reading. So the user has to click a button in order to trigger it, so you don't just stream all of this data in there. And then when you're done, you can simply start call sensor.stop. There's a callback function that you pass in there, and then you can do something with this sensor data. What this means is that I could take a phone, run my website on that phone, and as someone uses it, I can then take the accelerometer values of that phone, convert them into instructions, and then instruct the drone to do different things. So as you move your phone, you get this X, Y, and Z value that gets passed in. And you get to actually see this, these values in your code. I then translated this through the very scientific process. I need you to pay attention. Very scientific process of console.logging what each of the values were as I held my phone in different positions. And this is the result of that. When I lift my phone, the drone would take off. When I lean my phone forward, the drone would move forward. And as I put it back down, the drone would then land. I was quite excited about this one, so I rushed to the office and I said, guys, look at what I built. And my then boss, our CIO, says to me, this is cool, but controls and phones are boring. You should try fly it with bananas. He laughed and he walked away. And it kept me up at night. I kept wondering, why would he say that? Why would he challenge me like that? And so at number 3, of 5 perfectly good ways to fly a drone, let's fly it with some bananas. Turns out you have bananas in the UK, so I found some downstairs. I have my drone and I have some circuits here. Let me see if I can show you. I'm about to show you a really, really beautiful website. Don't judge. This is a website that's running locally, so I've got VS Code running here. It's just a whole bunch of demos, and we're going to run our fruits demo over here. And this is one of the trickiest talks I've ever done, because there's so much chance to this. So my drone is blinking, which means that it's not blinking anymore. So I'm going to turn on my drone, and it's going to listen out for Bluetooth connections. I'm using web Bluetooth in order to search for characteristics of the specific drone, to try and drown out the noise from all of your smart devices. Over here, I've got a small circuit, and I'm going to connect it very scientifically by taking this wire and sticking it into the banana. And I'll take this other one and stick it into that banana as well. And then, third banana, why not? There are 3 bananas after all. So with some wires in there, I'm going to turn on my drone. My drone is blinking, so it's looking for a connection. And as I click connect to drone, my browser is looking for characteristics of the specific drone. I'm just going to reload that just in case. Don't mind the console, guys. JavaScript developers. So I'm connecting specifically to this drone, and it is refusing. So I'm just going to reset the drone quickly. Oh, no, it wasn't refusing. It was because it was already connected. Look at Lucky. Cool. So I'm just going to restart the drone, reload my page, and maybe I should look at it when I do this. I just hope it doesn't fly into my face, which is something that has happened before. So connect to the drone, searching for the drone, looking for those characteristics. We found it. I paired to it. There's a solid green in there, which means that when I press my takeoff button, it should take off. It means that as I touch this banana, it can move left. And when I touch this banana, we now see the drone moving left, the other left. Now, it also means that I can do cool things like making the drone flip because, bananas. I just realized I didn't bring a landing banana. Cameraman, can you catch it? Caught it. Cool. I'm going to plug that in because I want to show you one more thing. So what I've got here is a couple of bananas, 3 in particular, and they're connected via something called a makey-makey. So this is the board that I've got here. The first version of this I built with an Arduino Uno because I wanted to build the cheapest version of this. But after that, I had a job, so I could buy this makey-makey. And all this is doing is it's using a web USB-C or web USB to trigger keyboard events. So the code is actually just looking for different buttons that are being pressed. And as I short the circuit, I just trigger those keyboard events. How it works is that bananas, in fact, all things are made up of water. All organic things are made up of water, including ourselves. And water is a conductor. Can I swear? I can't swear on stage. A really crappy conductor. And so even though it's not a good conductor, The entire time, I kept touching one of these wires, which is actually connected to ground. And so I just kept shorting the circuit on different ports. And the code that I write then is just looking for a voltage drop across those different ports, and then it can assume that I'm touching each one of these different fruits. So this is just a little bit of current that's running through here. At this point, I was really, 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 really happy. And I rushed back to work and I said, bananas, done. Try me. I was then challenged to do it with narkies, with cream dessert, all sorts of things, and it was fun. And then our CIO walked in again and said, "You're wasting all of our food. You should try flying it without touching anything." And I went home and I stressed about this for quite a while. And I thought, why would he do this to me? Why would he challenge me on such a thing? At number 2, of a perfectly good way to fly a drone, flying it with no hands. I thought about this long and hard, and I built a demo for it. I'm going to show you the demo that I built second. The first one that I want to show you is one that I vibe coded last night, which is sketchy, to say the least. So this demo uses my camera and something called handpose.js. That is a massive zoom. Okay, no hands detected. Is there a hand now? Yes, there is a hand. So I'm going to try and connect to the drone again, and I'll tell you about some of the problems with this demo before showing the one that I built. I'm not saying I'm better than the AI, but hey. So once again, reusing pretty much the same things. I'm looking for the drone in particular. I connect to the drone. I hope the drone is connected. Doesn't look like it. I probably need to hold it again. This drone seems to have issues with being far away from me. There we go. Let me put it down and try take off. Drone? No? What is it complaining about? So all I'm saying is the AI doesn't work. So the fundamental problem with this demo, which we can gloss over because it's actually not important, the next one is more important, is that because I didn't have time to go through the scientific process of console logging all of my instructions, I couldn't actually get all the movements working. But I did get some of it rotating, and you'll see that it's quite difficult to map my hand to the specific movements. I'm just going to land it there, but you can see that it moves. And I'll show you a better version of doing this. That's if I can catch it. I've clearly had some practice. A better way to do this is to rely on some hardware. So for this, I'm going to try and connect to the drone one more time. It's looking for the drone. We've got it. We've connected to it. I should probably put it down. And the drone takes off. But now I should have final control over the drone. So I can take it forward, rotate right, rotate left, move it back towards me. Jeez. Right, back, right, back, turn left, and just move left. And land. And this is quite responsive. The problem is the lens in front of me is a little bit dusty. Let me just land that safely. Awesome. So what we had there is that I am very, very interested in human-computer interaction. A part of me feels like we have been stuck with the mouse and a keyboard, which are really, really great ways to interface with computers for such a long time, but I worry that it can sometimes be exclusionary and sometimes narrow how we imagine human-computer interaction. And so my master's was particularly focused on challenging that notion and looking at how we can explore that a little bit further. So at this point, I took a look at how we could vibe code the solution, and that came with bugs. And this was a really, really stark reminder for me that sometimes a problem is made easier just by getting better hardware. OpenAI would absolutely love me saying this, and Microsoft. And what we're doing here is that I was using something called a leap motion sensor, which is a tiny, tiny camera right here in front of me. And all it was doing is that it was mapping out my hands in a 3D space as vectors. So each one of my fingers were being provided to me as a vector. And I went through the very scientific process of console logging an aggregate of all of those vectors and seeing what the values are at different positions of my hand. And that's how I knew what instructions to send to the drone. At this point, I was convinced that this drone is pretty much bulletproof and that I could fly it with all of these things without crashing it, until a friend of mine suggested that I let my audience fly this drone. This seemed like the most simple and easiest thing to do. I just let people tweet at the drone. I have a socket that's reading all of this data and telling the drone what to do. It didn't go too well. The first time I did this, people tried to crash the drone. Everyone started colluding in the crowd and making it go all the way left. How it works is that we would just have a hashtag, like hashtag NDC, and then you could all tweet left, right, flip, all sorts of these different commands. This morning, while I was preparing, I decided to build something, and then I was worried about your privacy and your data. I'll show you the demo nonetheless, but we're not going to do it because I don't have permission from the conference organizers. What I built, what I vibe coded, was a Slack bot. And the Slack bot would effectively read all of the tweets from or all of the posts from a specific channel. Do I have Slack running? Let's see if we can show you. So if I then go left, we'll see that all of those posts from that channel could then come into this dashboard here. And then we could have it in all sorts of different modes. One such as chaos mode, where whatever instruction comes in, that's the instruction that we send to the drone. That's one that's definitely going to crash this drone. So we are not going to do this because I didn't get permission from the conference organizers to add a bot to the Slack channel. But we can see that it works. And I've decided never to do the Twitter one anymore because there's just so many bots on the platform, and the platform is just becoming difficult to use. And of course, the license is what, $5,000 now, I think. So I like the Slack option. I'll probably work on a few other integrations. Now, I promised you that I'd overshare. One of the last things I want to tell you about myself is that I've started feeling really, really old lately. And I've noticed a couple of changes happening. In order to keep up with this new age, I decided to go to the gym. The problem with the gym is that when you walk in there and you've never been there, the gym can be a pretty scary place. I don't know what people are training for, but it's absolutely terrifying. And so I decided the gym is not for me. Instead, I'm going to go back to sports. I like two sports in particular, football and horse riding. Not like that, it looks more injuries, actually, not even like that. It looks a little bit more like this. So I do two sports, one in which the players pretty much act injured all the time, and the other, the players, even though, or the sports men and women pretend not to be injured just so that they can finish their races. My friends find it absolutely hilarious that it's football that got me in this knee brace, and I had to keep it on for about 6 months after suffering a tear to my ACL. At this point, I realized a couple of things about age. It's that it's changing me. And one of the ways that it was changing me is that it was making me really, really, really grumpy. And one of the things that made me grumpy while I had this injury was shopping malls. The design of shopping malls absolutely upset me. You drive to a shopping center, there's a sign outside that says pharmacy. And when you walk in, the actual pharmacy is about 600 meters away. So marketing gets in the way of really good design. Colleagues say, no, but they've got ramps. I don't know if you've ever tried walking down a ramp with crutches. It doesn't work. Crutches are designed to be on flat surfaces. And this got me really, really thinking. While I was looking for someone to blame for my misfortune and my suffering at the mall, I started thinking about whose responsibility is it? And I started thinking about whose responsibility it is in our space, in software, to make sure that the things we work for everyone, regardless of their situation. And so this took me down the rabbit hole of being interested in accessibility. To get a working definition, accessibility is the quality of easily being reached, entered, or used by people who have a disability. I don't particularly like this one. I prefer this one because I'm a web developer. Web accessibility talks about websites, tools, and tech that are designed and developed so that people with disabilities can use them, but more specifically that people can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the things that we do. And after going down a massive rabbit hole, I answered my own question. Whose responsibility is it? It's everyone. And I realized that we've long agreed that it works on my machine is not an acceptable answer. So it baffles me that people are still quite happy for it working with some people. For some, and not everyone. Which brings me to our 0th way to kill a perfectly good drone, with words. For our last demo, I built a similar website, if I can. Actually, I don't know why I'm straining my eyes. I could just zoom into this beautiful website, right? So here, I'm using something called the Web Speech API. And over here, what this is doing is that it's just taking it'll take my instructions and try and figure out what word I said. And from a preset list of words, it will choose one and send that to the drone. This drone's battery is doing way better than I anticipated. Let's see. I know this drone has attachment issues, so I'm going to keep it close to me. I'm going to connect to the drone one last time. It's looking for the drone. We've got the drone, and we have a solid green, which means that if I start listening here, I should be able to say, take off. Did the drone disconnect? It did. Let's try reconnect it again. And if I say, take off, let's see. I'm scared of touching it. I'm just going to reset our page quickly so I can connect to the drone again. Let me zoom out so that we can see that properly, so that I can see it properly. And so I'm going to connect to the drone one more time, looking for the drone. We've got it paired with it. I've got a solid green. I'm going to start listening and take off. The drone keeps disconnecting. Let's try that one more time. At least you can see that left, right, flip. There we go. Land. Talk is done. The cool thing about this venue that I particularly like is that the lights are also on you. So I can see that some of your faces look like this right now. You're going, what on earth is this guy talking about? What does this have to do with being a professional software developer? In my job, I am responsible for learning and development in our company. I also teach computer science at universities, and I get to guest lecture across the country. And one of the things that I've realized is with technology changing so quickly, everyone is worried about being better and improving their skills. One of the most common questions I get is, how do I become a great developer? People with decades of experience who have so much knowledge underestimate just how much they know and how much they have to share with people. Because as the technology changes, the underpinning fundamentals largely stay the same. And so we know that in order to be great at anything, you need to engage in deliberate practice, and that this deliberate practice is absolutely necessary in order to become an expert in anything. And when we think about it, what the skill that we need to hone, especially with changes in our ecosystem like AI, is actually plain old problem solving. And with the technology changing as fast as it is today, what becomes important is to go back to those fundamentals and keep upskilling. Lately, upskilling and trying to keep up with tech trends has started to feel like such a chore for people. And so we need to go back to ways that really motivate people on the individual level. Certs are absolutely awesome, but they're not a great way to motivate people. You need to get people to do things that matter to them. For me, it's playing around with useless technologies. And while building all of these demos, I learned so many different parts of the web that I use today at work. In fact, all of this hardware work that I'm doing now, I'm now in a POC stage with a very large car manufacturer, and we're building some interesting things there. I'm currently working with a client in the farming space where we're looking at using drones in order to improve yield in macadamia farms in Southern Africa. So all of these things that I learned just for fun on building drones is actually tools that I need to use in my daily job. At work, this has culminated in me building a lab, an electronics lab, even though we're a software company. And one of the first things that was built in this lab is this box. This box is awesome. It was built by Jerry, and when you plug it in to a laptop and you press it, it opens up a web browser and orders her favorite wine. Jerry also built this, a lightsaber, because she went home and told her husband she wants a lightsaber for Valentine, and her husband said, build it yourself. And so we built it. We do this because playing is growth, and this is how we play. And I was hoping to inspire you to also go back to playing with this technology, not just for the sake of doing work. The tech ecosystem is changing. Let's not forget to have fun, especially as we build all of these important, concrete things. It doesn't have to be one size fits all. You can take this into your own hands. Keep playing and keep growing. My name is Lucky Nkosi. Thank you very much.